Hi, welcome to Climate Week. I'm Mary. I'm from Orlando. I work for the Electrification Coalition as a Florida, Georgia organizer, and I'm going to take you for a ride today. We're going to learn all about electric vehicles and what is happening here in Florida. So the Electrification Coalition is a nonpartisan, nonprofit group, and we are business leaders trying to promote policies and actions. So we're going to facilitate the deployment of electric vehicles on a mass scale. And this is going to help our economy, our environment, our national security, all caused by our dependence on oil. So I want you to think, if money were no object and you could buy any electric car, what would you want to buy? I personally would love to have a Tesla. That would be my choice. But you also know there's more than just cars out there on the market that are electric. You can have electric school buses. And one of the fun things that the Electrification Coalition is working on is we do things like drive electric. That's where we bring electric cars to Tallahassee and have our lawmakers talk about why we need to drive electric. So what are the benefits of driving an electric vehicle? One important reason is national security. Think how nice it would be if we didn't have to rely on Russia or a foreign country to bring in our oil and make our gasoline. Cost savings. Electric cars are much cheaper to run than gas cars or internal combustion engines. There's no engines to break, there's no hoses, there's no timing belts, and also think you never have to fill it up with gas. There's also the public health benefits. There's no CO2 emission coming out of the tailpipe, so there's no fumes. So this is much healthier for our planet and for our lungs. And lastly, it's really good for the environment. We don't have to drill for oil off their coast. We don't have to have oil leaks. We don't have to have tankers breaking apart. We don't pollute our waters, and it's good for the manatees and for the dolphins. Cars are rolling across Florida right now. There's almost 700,000 electric vehicles, which are going to be expected on our roads by 2030. And Florida residents are buying electric cars really fast. Only California are buying more EVs than Floridians. And Florida roads are some of the most traveled in the nation. We have nearly 22 million residents and over 122 million visitors every year. So if all these people are going to start pouring onto our roads and they're going to all have electric cars, how are we going to charge all these vehicles between the Keys and Pensacola? So this summer, the federal government passed a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act. And what that means is a lot of money that's going to go and help go green for our United States. This will include things like rebates on your home electric. If you want to put a new washer or dryer in, you can get a rebate. But the part we're going to talk about is the $5 million that's going to go out to the states to help adopt and implement clean vehicle standards. Another law that came out this summer is called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And this kind of dedicates the money for these new charging stations. There's $5 billion to build out charging stations across the United States. And some of this money is also going to go for things like clean school buses. There's grants right now. If your community wants to get money for an electric school bus, this is the time to do it. So we always talk about follow the money. That's what we're going to do. We're going to follow this money as it's coming down from the federal government. There's money called NEVI. I just talked about that. That means National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. So if you can look down here, you're going to see different states and how much money they got. Here in Florida, we got a huge chunk of money. We got $198 million to help build out our electric charging stations. But now we have to follow that money and see where it's going to take us and what highways we're going to build these charging stations on. So from coast to coast, you're going to see EV or electric vehicle stations in Florida, but there are going to be new standards. It's not going to be just a hodgepodge of charging stations. So the NEVI program is going to include about 170 direct current chargers along 1,200 miles of the most traveled corridors in our state. And these charging stations are going to be the fastest there are on the market. You're going to be able to charge your vehicle in just minutes, as opposed to level 2 chargers that require hours to complete a full charge. This also means there's going to be standard plugs. They have to be American-made EV chargers. There's going to be minimum uptimes. There's going to be data sharing provisions. That means you're going to be able to look at your phone and see how many people are sitting on the charging stations, which ones are open, how much longer until the next car leaves. You're also going to have the ability for fast charging stations to charge at least 4 vehicles at a time. So this is really truly the words jump start. This is really going to jumpstart the EV charging here in our state. So if you have been thinking about buying your new electric vehicle, this is a great time to do it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be new either. It can be used because there are tax credits right now. So if you buy your car between now and the end of this year, you're going to be eligible for a tax break. You're going to get $7,500 for a new EV. You're going to get $4,000 for a used EV, but your car must have its final assembly here in North America. So go ahead, go get that new EV you've been thinking about because you can get that credit, but you have to use it before the end of this year. I love this slide because it visually shows you where all the new charging stations are going to come in. Florida's going to be adding more than 4,000 miles of EV stations. We call this alternative fueling because it's not gasoline. There's also several areas. If you one of these areas, these are all the hot spots right now for EVs, and we need to start building EV charging stations immediately. Fort Myers, Naples, Ocala, the Villages, Tallahassee. And what it means also in green are already the existing areas where you can stop and fill up with your power. And little circles means those are going to be the direct charging stations. This is where they're all going to be. There is also money set aside for rural communities, and they too get special grants to help them build these structures. So if you happen to live in an area that's called rural, like around Lake Okeechobee, this is a great time to go back to your local county commissioner and say, hey, do you know where our EV stations are going to go? So the money to help build in rural areas is going to be called community grants. It's $1.25 billion. And what the federal government wants to do is help you build electric charging stations. So it's really not fair that all the Miamis, Orlandos, the Tampas get all the money. We need to make sure that if you live in a smaller community, you have money too in your area for electric vehicle charging. So this money is going to help build charging stations in public roads, schools, maybe your park, your library. They're also going to give it to areas like HUD housing, low and moderate income. You never know who might be buying an EV, and we also need to make sure that people who live in multi-unit dwellings get EVs. That's someone like me. I live in a condo here in Orlando, and so we need to make it easier for everyone, not just homeowners, to have EV charging stations. So to address this need for apartment and condo charging, what other states are doing, such as Los Angeles, the Bureau of Street Lighting has installed more than 400 charging stations that are on street lights. In Portland, Oregon, GE has installed level 2 chargers on utility poles. You can see that here on the picture. And they've coordinated with the city to designate certain spots as EV parking only. And these locations were selected based on the concentration of multifamily housing and access to off-street parking. So here in my neighborhood of College Park, that would work perfect. There's a street light right around the corner, and they could just pull that power right down there and put an EV charging station in. In New Orleans, the City Council has voted to let EV owners apply for a permit, and you can install your own charger right along the curb there. One of the really cool things about EVs is basically a battery on wheels. So what you can do is you can send power back to the grid using your car. EVs have two-way charging capability, and it can actually be used to back up your power in case of a hurricane might strike. Think of Puerto Rico that just lost all its power over the weekend, and if they had EVs, they could be used that to supply power right now. So with an EV being essentially a large battery on wheels, this new emerging technology is known as vehicle to grid. And it does have the potential for tens of thousands of EVs to supply power back during a hurricane. It's also true with electric school buses. Those are giant batteries that will last a couple days, and that could power up something like a library or someplace where you could go and actually get cool and charge your phone and batteries and get your radio working. So those are some of the things that you might consider with an EV too. So our big cities, the Miamis, the Orlandos, the Tampas, are doing really well on EV, building out their infrastructure. But we talked a little bit about the rural areas. We need to help these rural areas get ready for EV infrastructure. So that's where we come into play. The Electrification Coalition right now is working with rural areas. We have certain primers on how to make their fleets go electric. So we're working with rural co-ops that are electric companies. We're going to hold a roundtable for members of the Florida legislature and state agencies such as Transportation, DOT, on medium and heavy duty electric trucks. Those are things like the trucks that will haul the groceries back and forth from Lakeland for the distribution center at Publix, or they might go to the Port of Miami. They might go to the Cape Canaveral. So these heavy duty trucks also are going electric. And we want to make sure that the charging stations are inside these different ports too, so the trucks can charge up. And lastly, we're working with electric school buses here in Florida. We'll know in October which areas have applied for electric school buses and who has been awarded. But Florida is a leader already on electric school buses. There's more than electric school buses already rolling here in Florida. And the next round of grants will be announced in October. So we're excited to see who else will be getting school buses. So a couple of events that are coming up. There's going to be National Drive Electric Week in Winter Park on September 24th from 9 to 1. This is actually a national event, so you can just Google National Drive Electric Week and find out where one is being held close to you. It's a really fun time. They'll let you do ride and drives for free on electric cars. And the Electrification Coalition is going to have a roundtable sometime in December about heavy-duty trucks. So if you are thinking about your fleet going electric, let us know. I'll be glad to invite you. So if you're thinking about going electric, there's a couple of websites you might go to. First of all, go to the Electrification Coalition website. There's everything from drive kits to EVs in rural communities, how to help electrify municipalities if you happen to be a government person, or you may just be thinking about buying your own electric car. Go out there and just start Googling and seeing what you can find, but this is definitely a great place to start looking, is on the Electrification Coalition website. So now that you guys have had a grand tour of Florida by EV and you know where all the money is going to come from, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Mary. I'm a campaign organizer, and there's my email. And I do hope to see you at an electric charging station very soon. And let's go drive electric. Thanks, and happy Drive Electric Week.